Wow, today's a busy day. Busy day at the I Love Seville studio. Look at the screen for today's headlines. Like the show, share the show. Look at the screen for headlines we're going to cover today on the Tuesday edition of the I Love Seville show. We will talk collateral damage and fallout from the protest this weekend. We will continue to ask questions that you, the viewer and listener, seem to have as well. We will continue to be fair with our commentary, but hold those in charge accountable with our commentary. We will also cover other topics of interest in the program, including what VDOT is saying is a very concerning, what would you characterize it as? Inability for the city of Charlottesville to execute projects in a timely fashion. They called the city VDOT deficient.
And in budget.
Yeah. So here the Virginia Department of Transportation is telling the city of Charlottesville that you cannot get projects done that VDOT is helping fund on time and in the confines of a budget. We'll relay that information to you as well. We found that compelling. We appreciate Deep Throat sharing that with us as well via Twitter. We'll talk about a piece of property that caught my attention on the MLS, another property with upzoning potential, and we'll highlight some of the localities that have the most expensive homes in Central Virginia. Surprisingly, it's not Charlottesville, Virginia. All those stories and more, including perhaps Judah Wickower indicating that his tune has changed from yesterday's program. Maybe we lead with that on today's show, Judah Wickower. It's going to be a conversational program, my friend, not a come to Jesus program. It will be friendly discourse amongst two people who occasionally have to agree to disagree. The friendly discourse should not be combative, although from tendency I am the one who leads us in that direction. I do it solely for the sake of a talk show, though. Give the show a like and a share anywhere you are watching. Like the show, share the show, like the show, share the show. John Blair, my friend, we will start momentarily. Ginny Hu, I agree that registration, that live stream had numerous errors that I found frustrating as well before finally being able to log on. All right, we can rock and roll. Judah B. Wickower, J-Dubs, Jumping Jack, Judah Wickower, the jack of all trades. Judah Wickower, the jack of all wits. Judah Wickower, you can call him many things. You can even call him late for dinner. Just don't call him the Great Bubini. We're ready to rock and roll when you are, my friend. Quiet on the set.
Quiet on the set.
Quiet on the set. Just don't call him late for dinner. Good Tuesday afternoon, guys. My name is Jerry Miller. Thank you kindly for joining us on the I Love Seville show. We are less than 2 miles where a live stream is being hosted and executed on grounds at the University of Virginia, a live stream that had numerous issues with its launch, its execution, and its ability to connect with viewers and listeners that were anticipating the stream at a certain time. Frankly speaking, Judah and I can relate to the position the University of Virginia and its technology team are in as they launch a live stream that is riddled with connection issues, such as the life of live streaming content. And few know that life more than the jack of all wits and yours truly. Take a look at the screen for today's headlines. We will continue asking questions that matter. Albert Graves, welcome to the program. We will continue to be fair with our commentary. However, we will continue to hold people accountable with our commentary. Today's program is one that we hope will offer education, enlightenment, and some entertainment. But when you are, 24, 48, roughly 72, 80 hours removed from a protest that was disbanded by riot geared wearing Virginia State Police officers with pepper spray in their hands, shooting said spray at teenagers and protesting students and community members. It's tough to make the content fluff. It's got to be real and it's got to be raw, and that's what we're going to do today. Here are questions that I have before I open the mic to Judah Wickower, who has indicated to me that he is going to change his tune from yesterday's program. The questions that I have are, who called the state police on UVA protesters? That came up on yesterday's show. The question I have, who are the outsiders that the University of Virginia made mention of in a press release, outsiders that drove fear within the ranks of the University of Virginia, so much fear that state police were called in order to potentially pepper spray and then pepper spray the protesters on grounds. What role did Jim Ryan have? What role did the Board of Visitors have? What role did Governor Glenn Youngkin have? Will the University of Virginia graduation ceremonies be interrupted a mere, 10 days from now? 11 days from now? What is the fallout for what happened this weekend when it comes to job loss and job security? And we will start at the top of the totem pole at Carr's Hill. We'll also talk on today's program about the Virginia Department of Transportation. They have issued documented citation that the city of Charlottesville is, their words, deficient with actualizing transportation projects with VDOT funding and keeping those projects within the confines of a budget. We'll talk on this program about a property in the city of Charlottesville with a $699,000 asking price, located, ladies and gentlemen, at 421 9th Street Northwest. It is being marketed and promoted with upzoning potential. Yet another example of upzoning, driving up land and real estate acquisition to levels that were not justified pre-new zoning approvals. We'll talk the cities in Central Virginia with the most expensive houses. One city in Central Virginia is ranked amongst the most expensive jurisdictions in the Commonwealth, and that particular jurisdiction will surprise you. We will highlight that 1 week from today, Dr. John Shabe and his marketing director, Brian Combs, will join us in the studio. We will highlight Pro Renata Brewery, an epicenter in Crozet that's been dubbed the Disneyland of Crozet. This brand is expanding quickly, not just to downtown Stanton, but now to the Shenandoah Valley with the acquisition of another entity. Dr. John Shabe and Brian Combs will be in the studio a week from today to highlight that brand growth. I want to welcome to the program the jack of all trades, the jack of all wits, jumping jack Judah Wickower, Judah B. Wickower. You can call him a lot of things, including late for dinner, which he frankly often is. Just do not call him the Great Bubini. I am proud to call him a friend and my colleague of 13 going on 14 years at VMV Brands and I Love CVille. Judah, before we go anywhere, we give some love to Otto Turkish Street Food. If you guys need lunch or dinner suggestions, Otto Turkish Street Food on Water Street is what Judah and I suggest. It's street food made fresh daily, priced reasonably. Otto Turkish Street Food. You try it, you'll love it. You keep coming back. Otto Turkish Street Food, locally owned and operated. My friend, first, lower third on screen if you could. A lot we're going to cover on today's program. I want to give the floor to you as you've had 24 hours to digest yesterday's program.
Well, this is certainly the top question for me, and I think the top question for a lot of people is who exactly called the state police? It's a great question. I really wish somebody would answer it. We all have theories. I think the top top of the list is Youngkin and/or Youngkin using the Board of Visitors to start this off with the state police.
This is commentary that you did not find compelling or reasonable on yesterday's show. On yesterday's program, the commentary that you relayed to the viewers and listeners was Tim Longo calling the state police and/or maybe Jim Ryan. I push back with the Youngkin theory. I think the Youngkin theory is the most realistic. Are you changing your perspective and your commentary or adjusting your commentary from yesterday's program where you seem to side that the use of a militant state police utilizing pepper spray and riot gear to disband a riot, a protest that led to the arrest of what we know is now 24 students and not 25, with only 24 protesters, I should say, with only one of those 24, only one of the 24 that were arrested were charged with any kind of physicality or violence or attacks of police. Only one of the 24. Is the tune changing today, my friend?
Did I really say yesterday? I said that they were fully...
You used words like wisdom. You use words like...
I think you're taking a lot of what I said out of context.
It's documented. It's on record. There's video and audio that we can reference should we need to play.
But you were taking a lot of it out of context yesterday.
I don't think I was.
I don't think I was ever saying that the use of tear gas was a good thing.
Okay, you mentioned in our pre-production meeting that your tune has changed from yesterday. Then I'll get out of your way and say those were your words, not mine. What has changed with your perspective on yesterday's program to today's show?
I mean, I would need to go back and watch everything that I said to tell you exactly what has changed. I still think that Longo may have been the one that said, hey, we don't want to deal with this. We would like to bring in someone else so that this is not on our hands. But ultimately, this decision had to come from someone. And I think that whether or not he passed the baton and somebody said, okay, we're sending in the state police, I'm still curious who ultimately owns that decision. I apologize if yesterday it sounded like I was condoning the use of tear gas. I don't remember ever saying that I thought that was a good idea. In fact, I clearly remember saying that both sides, there were no good sides in what happened yesterday.
Philip Dow watching the program, his photo on screen, viewers and listeners, you can find where you stack up in the power rankings by going to iloveseville.com/viewer rankings. Philip Dow is watching in Scottsville, number 14 in the family. Holly Foster's commentary is next from YouTube. First, Philip, he says, it would not surprise me if donations are affected due to the school's mismanagement of what happened on Saturday. I think donations are certainly going to be affected when it comes to the University of Virginia. Alumni are disenchanted, they are dispirited, they are demoralized, they are downright downtrodden when it comes to how the University of Virginia handled Saturday's events. I 1,000% agree with what Philip Dow just said. Holly Foster, the Queen of Henrico, watching the program in Henrico right now. She is a key member of this family. Holly Foster is number 17 in the family. On YouTube, she says, I saw the letter from the history department in the Daily Progress this morning. You mentioned it on the show yesterday. It was a great letter. Hopefully the professors will not be disciplined. The UVA history department, a friend of mine signed that letter, knew about this letter on Sunday morning. They asked for empathy and grace and forgiveness, and they asked for consideration on whether the tactics utilized on Saturday were the right approaches to disband students who were, the history department, exercising, says, their freedom of speech. They called on Jim Ryan, and they utilized the safety and security that comes with the power of numbers to write this letter. And what I found most compelling, they signed the letter with their names on it. Today, there's a virtual town hall going on. Jim Ryan, Tim Longo on that town hall. This virtual town hall has drawn the ire of many that were anticipating the town hall. First, the registration, it was marketed, it was billed, it was promoted as open to anyone. When you tried to get on the town hall today, a 12:15 start, you had to in fact register. A lot of folks became very irritated on social media of this. They said this was a non-registration town hall. Furthermore, the Religious Studies Department has boycotted this virtual town hall and says this is bogus. A town hall done in virtual setting is done with the strategy of insulating or offering digital protection for its participants, as opposed to having an actual town hall that's in person where you have to look the folks that disagree with you and may not have the most pleasant things to say about you in the eyeballs.
I believe there's a member of that of the religious. I don't know if it's religious studies, something like that, who turned in his resignation over this.
I would not be surprised, and I do not use phrases like this lightly, if job status and job security becomes a topic of conversation at the top of the UVA totem pole. It is no secret that members of the Board of Visitors, many of them appointed by the Governor Glenn Youngkin, do not see eye to eye with the University of Virginia President Jim Ryan. Yeah. Furthermore, it's no secret that there's a subsection of the Board of Visitors led by Razorblade Burt Ellis and his Jefferson Council that are doing what they can behind the scenes to return the University of Virginia to either a more neutral, a more center of the aisle, or perhaps a more conservative ideology with its curriculum, with its student base, and with the commentary and level of protest that's allowed on grounds. I'm going to ask the first question again. Who called in the state police to disband a protest that for 99% of the time was completely peaceful? Furthermore, those that called into the state police to disband the protest, did they also greenlight the usage of pepper spray prior to the release of said spray? Was there authority or autonomy given to the riot gear wearing state police that pepper spray could be utilized? I want to highlight this. There were 24 arrests made. 24. 16 of them were charged with trespassing. 7 were not processed by the jail at all. That means 17 actual arrests. 1 was charged with assaulting a law enforcement officer. Judah has some intel on that.
I believe she's a 41-year-old photographer.
And we've seen?
You're talking about the video? Yeah, we've seen the video where it's from what I've heard and from what I saw on the video, it was...
We saw video on grounds.
Yeah.
With a photographer being arrested who was doing what?
I couldn't really tell from the video, but I've since read that she was standing and she was trying to get in the way of the police and an older woman who was using a cane to walk, who was having trouble backing up, and was worried with the approach of the police at the speed they were moving. And this woman apparently jumped in front of her to try to keep her safe. And somebody, I guess the police are alleging that she threw a punch, which seems a little wild.
A little wild.
We certainly didn't see that in the video, but the video was not the best quality.
Albert Graves watching the program, his photo on screen, key member of the family. Albert Graves, currently ranked in the family number 7. He says, "Gentlemen, it's not a good look for all of Seville to have a Zoom meeting to explain why lawbreakers were locked up. Will all criminals start having Zooms to explain why they are locked up? Good grief, just explains college-educated students don't have much common sense." Albert Graves also says, "How would you feel if you were Jewish and you keep hearing the chant, 'From the river to the sea'? He also tweets, "It's like a child. After giving your child numerous warnings about their behavior and they refuse to curtail the behavior, there are consequences, just like being told for days not to pitch tents. There will be consequences, and consequences were rendered. Go watch the video when the police first try to intervene. They are met with water bottles being thrown at them and umbrellas being pushed at them, and clearly the state police were brought in because the police were outnumbered by the protesters. Protests are allowed, tents are not, without a permit. Law is law." That's the take Judah had yesterday. The take that I had yesterday was this: there are interpretations of the law. An example of law interpretation is the speed limit, running a red light, walking out of bars after last call, staggering home on the corner to your dorm room or your fraternity while you come across Dwayne Jones, the corner police officer at the time, who let you continue despite clearly being drunk in public. We see folks all the time walking around Charlottesville smoking weed. Nothing happens to them. The law can be interpreted. And I ask you, the viewer and listener, if the interpretation we saw Saturday with the law, where you have state police in riot gear, pepper spraying a group of people that are predominantly students, teenagers, and young adults, was the best way to interpret and enforce the law. And from my vantage point, and I'm the first one on this program and on this platform to back the police, champion the police, give Chief Kachis and his team love, give Chief Reeves in Albemarle County love, Tim Longo and the police love. I back the police. I think the police were pawns on Saturday, pawns in a greater political chess match. And that chess match was Youngkin, who was working the board and utilizing the chess pieces, in this scenario, the police against protesters, to show that he was going to enforce law and order, and he was not going to have tomfoolery or the type of protest that does not identify with his voting base. And the very crappy aspect of this, the collateral damage of this, is the police were used as pawns by either the Board of Visitors acting on behalf of the governor or the governor himself. Longo is not going to make this call. He doesn't have the job status. It's not in his purview, his job purview. Jim Ryan is too much of a politician that pretty much has to acquiesce to the governor and the Board of Visitors. He's going to stay neutral. The Board of Visitors could make this call. At least some of them could. They're doing it on behalf of Youngkin, who appointed them to that board. I think this was political chess that played out on Saturday. And the chess that played out was Youngkin's voter base against the base that opposed Youngkin in either the voting booth when he ran against McAuliffe or in future booths when he either runs for Senate or U.S. President down the road. And I think what ended up happening here is we saw police utilized as pawns in a battleground, in a stomping ground, in a community, in a city, in a Charlottesville, Virginia area that is still healing or trying to heal from August 12, 2017. And part of that healing, part of that come to Jesus, is the relationship with police in the community. And from August 12th to 2017, stewards of this community like Chief Reeves and Chief Kachis and Chief Longo have done a good job of creating healing opportunities. Chief Kachis, through his walk and talks, where he goes to marginalized neighborhoods riddled with violence, and he welcomes his officers to said neighborhoods, and he plays basketball with the youth, or he plays football with the youth, or he just walks up and down the streets with community members and listens to learn. Chief Kachis has done so much good in his year and change on the job. And on Saturday, political pawns, the officers themselves, were put between a rock and a hard place. And that rock and the hard place were 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22-year-old kids, what they believe to be their passions and beliefs, whether it's virtue signaling or not. You know I think it's virtue signaling. Do I think students protesting on grounds at the University of Virginia are going to have a rat's ass effect on geopolitical terroristic activity? No, I don't. Do I think 18, 19, 20, or 21-year-old kids on grounds at Thomas Jefferson's University are going to impact what Hamas does in Gaza or what Israel does in Palestine? No, I don't. Do I think it's virtue signaling? Of course I do. Do I think it's an indication of students having time on their hands and being ideologically influenced by their professors or what they see on social media? Absolutely I do. But it's their right to protest. And if their right to protest was the interpretation of enforcing the law, having tents on grounds, and utilizing bullhorns on grounds was the best use of the law, and interpreting it, telling the state police to come on grounds in riot gear and pepper spray the kids. The collateral damage of that type of activity far outweighs negatively the disbursement of a protest on Saturday morning next to a chapel, next to the Biltmore, by the Virginian, by Shannon Library, former Alderman Library. And that's my problem right there, Judah B. Wickower. Jack of all trades, jack of all wits, jumping jack, Judah Wickower. And certainly not the great Bubini. You interpret the law because you know how it's interpreted and enforced will have collateral damage, especially in a vulnerable and healing community. Just like Officer Dwayne Jones, who turned his eye when students walk out of the Virginian or Coupe de Villes hammered and staggering down Elliowood Avenue to their dorms or to their fraternities. Or just like a police officer turns his eye when you're going 12 miles over the speed limit on Interstate 64 between exits 120 and 118B on your way to Shadwell and Keswick.
I'm not sure how often that happens.
Every damn day.
You sure?
You speed?
Yeah, but not 12 over.
You don't go 12 over?
No.
On the interstate when it's 65? You don't flirt with 77?
I usually keep it about 9 or 10 over.
Okay. Most folks, the rule of thumb is you keep it below 80.
No matter what the speed limit is?
No, dude. You can't keep it below 80 if it's 25.
Don't be, of course I didn't mean 25.
If it's 65 on the interstate and you're keeping it below 80, you're probably in a good position. Jump in here, jumping jack, Judah Wickower.
Oh man, I mean, I don't know how to follow your monologues.
How about with a monologue of your own?
Because, okay, I'm not sure how I feel about the.
Then go.
The accusation. Let me talk.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure how I feel about the accusation of playing chess. What was accomplished? What would be accomplished? And how could they have known that water bottles would be thrown? I don't know that.
If water bottles were thrown, wouldn't more than one person have been arrested? You had one person out of hundreds that was charged with assaulting a law enforcement officer.
But that wasn't for throwing a water bottle.
Throwing a water bottle at a law enforcement officer is assault. You cannot throw projectiles at police.
Why are you getting mad at me?
Because I'm not getting mad at you. I think what you're doing is you're not seeing the forest through the trees here. You are taking a press release issued by the University of Virginia's media division, a press release that was clearly doctored in favor or to show a positive light to UVA, a press release that utilizes phrases like there were outsiders of the group. What outsiders? Tell us who they are.
I mean, one of them got arrested.
A camera woman that was protecting an old lady with a cane. That's the outsider?
They don't mean people from Arkansas who came in to incite something. They're talking about people who aren't part of the university.
No, sir. Respectfully disagree.
Okay. All right.
We're in the business of perception management. When you utilize phrases like outsiders, you're clearly trying to paint a connotation and a denotation of someone that is a troublemaker, that's not supposed to be there, that is volatile and unpredictable.
Okay.
We can respectfully disagree on that if you'd like, agree to disagree. I'm fine with doing it. I find it the most compelling statistic from Saturday's turn of events is this. You had hundreds of protesters on grounds. Hundreds. And Longo makes reference to police not feeling secure and safe. The press release signed by Jim Ryan highlights assault and police not secure and safe as the compelling reasons to get the state police on grounds. Yet only one single person was arrested for assaulting the officers. And you, 10 minutes ago, just said, I saw the before and after of that video of the person who was arrested for assaulting an officer. And the before and after of that video of the person assaulting the officer does not seem to look like assault to neither you nor I.
That was one person.
That was the female, that was the person that was arrested for assault.
I know that.
Did it look like she assaulted the officer?
No. What does it have to do with... Okay, go ahead.
Okay, it has to do, if there were hundreds of people arrested for assaulting an officer, then calling in the state police and tear gassing and using riot gear was justified. If it's one that was popped for assaulting an officer, and both you and I have seen pretty tangible and compelling evidence that she did not assault said officer, instead was coming to the defense of an elderly woman utilizing a cane to walk around the protest, I would bet that this person charged with assault is going to have this charge dropped. Would you want to take that bet?
No, I think you're right. Most likely she'll have the charge dropped.
I'll bet you a bottle of bourbon that this person has the charges dropped completely of assaulting an officer. You want to bet a $100 bottle of Johnny Walker?
I just said I agree with you. Why would I want to bet against you?
Okay, so not a single person of this protest group is going to get charged with assault of an officer. Not a single one. Not a single one.
I guess you've made some point.
Pretty damn compelling point from my standpoint.
Okay.
I would love to hear your counterpoint.
There is no counterpoint. You're just...
I would love to hear any commentary whatsoever. And this is what I'm going to do. The mic right here, I'm going to go. I'll put it over here. And I'm going to do the monkeys. Here, speak call. Okay, go.
I believe it was Albert Graves who commented about water bottles being thrown and umbrellas being wielded. I'm not saying... Obviously, nobody got arrested for any of that, but that does not mean that those were not inciting incidents that escalated things. Now, there are going to be people that say the police came in there knowing what they wanted to do and that was already an option on the table, or they were already planning on, breaking out the tear spray and getting a little physical. But that doesn't change the fact that we have somebody saying, I believe they saw people throwing water bottles and wielding umbrellas. Does that merit a strong response? I don't think so. But I'm not a cop on a campus, having just watched what's been going on other college campuses across America. That also doesn't make their response right, but it goes some way towards explaining the response. As to, personally, I love your comments about grace, but they don't always apply in every situation. And in this case, whether you want to say that the university changed the law or changed the what's in the rule books,
permitting process.
there is also something called, I don't know, there is specific over general. If there is a general rule that says you're allowed to put up a tent anywhere on campus, that's great. But if somebody from the campus police, if Chief Longo comes and says multiple times, I'm sorry, but you can't put up tents here, the specific trumps the general. And when they allow you to put up tents on Friday night because it's raining, that's grace. But then ask you to take them down Saturday morning and you get pushback, and then Longo decides, I don't want to deal with this, this is too much for us. Then somebody makes the decision to call in the state police, and we end up with obviously a big mess.
A huge mess.
Yeah. I never said it wasn't a mess. I never said that anybody was in the right here. But the fact of the matter is that there was a fairly easy to follow chain of events that led to what happened.
We'll go to viewers and listeners. I respect your position. I respect your position. And I think it makes for compelling content for the show, and I think it provides different viewpoints for viewers and listeners. Let's go to Mr. Blair, number 2 in the family. John says, perhaps we will get a piece of evidence that changes our minds. For example, weapons or threat of violence. But unless we do, I am truly floored at the folks I am hearing that are very critical of UVA and the police. I'm talking about people who back the blue 99% of the time and are alums. These are about as true blood UVA and police backers as you ever get. When you lose this crowd, UVA simply loses all around. It's going to take a very long time to rebuild that.
No doubt. Yeah, I can tell.
Okay. Right there.
Mm-hmm.
Your strongest evangelists, your fraternity social chair and rush chair and philanthropy chair, your go to the home football games, the basketball games, the baseball games, the tennis matches, the squash matches, the lacrosse and soccer, the donations, the buying the gear, the multi-generation, crossing your fingers without putting pressure, hoping the next generation goes there. It was a horrendous look.
Yeah.
That continues to hit the national news cycle.
Which is another reason why I find it hard to believe that this was some kind of chess move, because this is not a good look for anyone involved here. And if whether it's Youngkin or the Board of Visitors thought that this was some type of master chess move, I'm not sure what they were hoping to accomplish, because I don't think they did it.
The University of Virginia is already pulling back its ban from grounds.
They're going to be allowed to finish their finals.
They're going to be allowed to come on grounds to finish their finals.
And then they'll be banned from grounds until next semester.
So banned for summer when they're not there.
Yeah.
The University of Virginia and law enforcement are already watering down the accountability. Over the weekend, and this time yesterday, students were banned from grounds. They were banned from grounds at a time when finals were happening, at a time their possessions were their on-grounds housing. And we asked, how can a student be banned from grounds during final exams and when they actually live on grounds? Wouldn't that make them homeless? Now those students are being allowed back on grounds during final exams, when they have to live on grounds during final exams and take their tests, and then are being told you can't be on grounds in the summer. Well, guess what? It's summer break. And then they're allowed to be back on grounds at the start of fall semester when they return.
There are some students that do stay over the summer, aren't
I
there?
stayed every summer. I stayed every
There you
winter
go.
break. I stayed every reading days, and I went home one day, a day and a half over Thanksgiving break. I stayed Easters, I stayed summer, I stayed Christmas. I never went home once I got here. The best time at the University of Virginia was Christmas break. It was an intimate crowd of students, not many at all, that went to the same bars and got after it and got to know each other. And that group stayed during summer break as well. We stayed year round.
So if there are any people like you in this
Those
group
students
that
would not be protesting, I can assure you that.
you think,
The students that we were hanging out with year round were not the group that were protesting. They were
Did
closing
those-
down the Biltmore. They were camping out in tents for tickets for Virginia basketball games. They were doing the fourth year, fifth at UVA football games. They were the social chairs and the rush chairs and the presidents of the fraternities and sororities. But they weren't doing protests on grounds for Middle Eastern hostages and geopolitical warfare.
that's fair.
And I'll bet you a bottle of booze. The student
really
who
want
was
that
charged. What's that?
You really want that bottle of booze.
I mean, we got a full bar over there. I'd love to stock it with some top shelf Johnny Walker. Or some Glenfiddich on your dime.
yeah, wouldn't everybody?
I'll bet you.
My dimes have been growing smaller lately, so don't hold your breath.
I'll bet you whatever you want to bet that these charges are dropped.
I'm sure most of them will be.
And not just the one that was assaulting the officer. In business, you know what? How about we just don't even talk about business? Let's just talk about marriage. Let's just talk about marriage, okay? In marriage, you learn to pick your spots with your partner.
Choose your battles. You mean?
Choose your battles.
Yeah.
If you
I think
see
that's-
your partner over time and you learn to choose your battles and your spots by spending time with your partner. And the more time you spend with your partner, the more years that you're married, the more time you're together, you start to understand each other's nuance and your body languages and your tics and what pisses you off and what you can push a little on. And when you start seeing those tics or that body language or that temper raise or the voice get to a certain level of pitch or the persistence of staying true to what that particular tenet or belief was,
That's when you dig the knife in.
that's when you, says the single man right now that has Liza the dog.
He's joking. Come
That's-
on. I mean, that's a truism in every family.
You learn to pick your spots. You just,
Yeah.
They could have picked their spot on Saturday.
Both sides could have.
If the students were just left to continue to protest, you know what probably would have happened?
Nothing.
Right.
I'm sure you're right.
Absolutely nothing. Worst case scenario, they protest to graduation, and then school's over, and no one's there, and
Yeah.
there's no attention, and it's done. Now you have a day forever written in UVA history books.
Infamy books. I doubt UVA is going to put this in their history books.
Infamy books, well said. You got a president who's on the hot seat. You got a police chief in Longo that's being crossfired.
I would bet you that bottle that somewhere out there in the back rooms of the governor's mansion and wherever it is that the board of visitors meet, there is a hot potato being passed around, and
Yeah. And you know who that hot potato is going to fall on? Who called the state police? You know who's going to be the scapegoat here? Probably Longo. The guy who's on the back end of his career, who's taken this police chief position as basically a moonlighting gig after being the chief of police in the city of Charlottesville. Jim Ryan's not going to be the fall guy.
right,
Youngkin's not going to be the fall guy.
definitely not.
Board of Visitors aren't going to be the fall guy.
They probably wouldn't care if they were. But
Exactly. going to be Longo. That's the fall guy.
Could be.
And this is going to further splinter the Board of Visitors and further weaken the job security and the brand equity and the goodwill built by Jim Ryan by running Boston marathons for children's hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
I got a 1:45 p.m. on Rio Road. I have to leave here in 2.5 minutes.
Oof.
Yeah.
Quick question. What do you make of, I believe, I can't remember where I read it, but there are people in Charlottesville calling for the Charlottesville City Council to start an investigation into all of this. Do you make anything
Michael
of that?
Payne is calling for that.
Really?
Michael Payne, after
maybe he's in
yesterday's
agreement.
program, and Michael Payne and I never agree on anything. Never agree on anything.
That's not true.
Okay, we agree on very little. Michael Payne is a socialist. I'm of the party of common sense. When I put it that way, it's Michael Payne. Michael Payne is clearly as left-leaning as it gets, where I'm more center-right. But yesterday, his commentary that he published immediately after our commentary aired on this show was almost identical to the commentary that I offered yesterday. And Payne took it a step further in yesterday's city council meeting, basically saying, hey, there needs to be an investigation into the police here locally. And Chief Kachis, I hope you hear this. Police, I hope you hear this. I don't think there should be an investigation into the Charlottesville Police Department at all.
I don't know why it would be an investigation into the Charlottesville Police Department to begin with.
Exactly.
That's why I was asking. That's
Exactly.
why I was asking you earlier.
And why do you make that statement? Back that up with a reasoning.
Well,
I got 90 seconds here.
Well, that's why I was asking you earlier where the state police are pulled from, because I thought, okay, if somebody's calling for the Charlottesville police to be investigated, maybe they were the ones that got called. Maybe they're kind of like, I don't know, the state police calls them in as. Anyways, it's very strange that somebody would be wanting to investigate the Charlottesville police when, by all appearances, they had absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with what happened on grounds.
Exactly. The investigation should be the following.
In fact, I think if Kachis and the Charlottesville police had been the ones there, this would have gone far differently and much more peacefully.
100%. That's the point I'm making. Where this thing got effed up was calling in the state police with no community ties, people that don't live in the community that are wearing riot gear and have pepper spray.
I'm with you 100% on that.
That's the issue. Who called the state police?
Yeah. And why did they
And you talk about outsiders. Those are the outsiders.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Those are the outsiders. If you had Kachis' team and Reeves' team and Longo's team, it would have gone way different.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Way different. You should investigate that. Who called in the state police? And I also want to know who UVA is calling outsiders or agitators. And I also want to follow very closely, watch these charges get dropped across the board. Because UVA is not going to F the lives of 19 and 20-year-olds.
I think they wanted this whole thing dispersed for the weekend. I think that's all the charges were. It was a means of getting them off grounds for a couple days.
We'll continue this discussion on tomorrow's program. On tomorrow's show, we'll talk the Virginia Department of Transportation calling the city of Charlottesville deficient with its transportation projects and with its ability to stay within budget.
Yeah.
VDOT calling the city deficient, exact words. We'll talk another property that's on the market with upzoning potential that's being marketed and the asking price is being pushed with upzoning potential and not real life potential. This is the I Love Seville show, and this is where the community goes to chitter chatter and has its silo cups of water while conversating with its friends and its neighbors. Water cooler, the water cooler.
Silo cups of water.
Should have said solo cups. For Judah Wickower and the man outside, my name is Jerry Miller. So long.